Welcome, everyone, to Astrolunachic's Guide to the Universe. I am Susan, aka Astrolunachic, and it is Monday, April 8th, the day of the dreaded eclipse. Dun, dun, dun. I cannot believe the level of hype. We have eclipses every 6 months, roughly, and yes, I don't understand, although I do. Uh, yes, I don't like the fear factor that's being spread with all of this. I don't dig it at all. And I was talking to someone yesterday, someone near and dear to me, about the eclipse, and they were asking me what I suggested that they do on this day to capitalize on the energy of the eclipse. And I said, no, I don't look at it that way. I don't look at, I think it's kind of arrogant of us to think that we can use and harness this energy. That's what I see the powers that were and the dark occultists. That's what I see them doing. I look at eclipses as a time to stop, go within, meditate, pray. I will not be going outside and looking at the eclipse. I don't consider it to be a party time. I don't, you know, I have in the past, basked in the rays of the eclipse, trying to absorb all of the positive energy. I don't think it's positive anymore. I actually think that um, the animals know what they're doing when they go quiet and still. And I think it's a weird new age thing to think that you can use the energy. Yes, you can use the energy, but what do you know what it's about until you go through it in prayer and meditation and ask for guidance for yourself on how to live your life from a more spiritual place, to get messages about upcoming changes in your life so that you can prepare with humility. Um, I don't know if I had negative effects from that one time in 2017 that I decided I was going to do sunbathing during the eclipse, but I think the things that came subsequent to that were a little bit undesirable. So there is that. But, you know, like I told my young friend yesterday, that's my opinion. You do what you want. And I understand. I understand the the feel of wanting to draw close to God, to want to want to cooperate with spiritual forces. And I said, yes, you should cooperate with spiritual forces, and this is how you should do it. You should, in my opinion, pray and meditate and ask for protection, guidance, grace, and a light for your path. That is my opinion. That is what I will be doing. So, you know, it'll be nap time for me. Pretty much nap time for all intents and purposes. So let's look at mappity map here of the planets. And that would be the time of the eclipse here on the East Coast where I am. It's, I don't know, somewhere around, 222. Let's call it that. I had it at 226 before, but that's fine. 19 degrees of Aries, and it is conjunct Chiron. We're going to talk about some asteroids today and the Mercury retrograde. So if you were paying attention during the fall eclipses, the last eclipse, solar eclipse that we had 6 months ago, uh, was in Libra at around 20 degrees. So these are sort of bookends, you know, and I think it's the best thing to just watch to see what unfolds for yourself and the events surrounding the eclipse time frame. We had a lunar eclipse 2 weeks ago in Libra. That set off a bunch of crazy things. You know, if you were paying attention. So there's the stuff that's happening external within the larger collective of people, and then we have our own personal life. You will have messages, just like with the Mercury retrograde, which we're under right now, which is why I think this is super intense and will probably be very interesting because we have a Mercury retrograde and an eclipse, and both of those things can bring earthquake type events. We've already seen it. Weather events. I think there was some pretty massive, crazy weather about 2 weeks ago-ish. Mercury going retrograde on April 1st. So we're already seeing that. And then the events that happen between the eclipses are important, even a week before the eclipses, a week after, because for personal timing, it depends on what degree your planets are at. So if the transits are not going to hit your planets for, let's say, a week out from the eclipse, then you may not see what it is immediately. But for those of us who are following the pattern of the astrological alignments and where they're hitting in our charts, then we probably know what area of life this is going to be occurring in. So I think it's interesting to look at where we are right now with the eclipse here. It'll be happening on the East Coast in the 9th house. Sun, the moon, Chiron. Now, Chiron is a centaur. It is an asteroid in mythology. The centaurs, they were half man, half human. They were a rowdy bunch who were raping, pillaging, and causing all kinds of mayhem. But Chiron himself is associated with healing. And I believe when it was discovered, I want to say 60s, 70s, something like that. Don't quote me. But that's when we really saw like the kind of coming together of what we consider to be the natural healing professions and the focus on the concept of mind-body healing. So we can look at that as being an influence on this eclipse, Chiron being at the very same degree of 19. So I also do look at the number in terms of the degree, and sometimes I will use this system where 1 degree is equal to 1 house. So with 19, we're going up to 12, right? Because there's 12 houses. And 19 is 7 past 12. So that's the 7th house. So we might add a flavor or add a dash of 7th house partnership type energy, and Aries and Libra and the nodes being in those signs does again emphasize the partnership aspect of it. When I mean partnership, when I say partnership, I mean myself, yourself, and another person. It's the face to face. So, you know, Aries and Libra, Libra, it's not all romantic and love. It's business partnership. It's also adversaries. So anyone that we are invested in an interaction with, and there's a bond there for whatever reason. We are emotionally and mentally invested in it. It also just speaks to our dynamics in relationship in general. And with this huge Aries emphasis, we're talking about emphasis on the self, healing the self, dealing with Aries / Mars issues, which would be, fire element, action, passion, aggression, assertiveness, personal agency, being self-reliant, having courage, daring to take a risk, taking a first step. Aries is cardinal energy. It starts things, doesn't always finish them. But with the Mercury retrograde, again, we are reviewing all of these things. We're looking at ourselves. We're looking at, how do we feel as an individual? Are we struggling with our identity, feeling, you know, Aries is the need for significance. The the Chiron in Aries is seeking meaning for the self, and meaning and purpose and significance. Aries is the I am. And so if you want to work up some affirmations for yourself, I am fill in the blank, right? Make your own Declaration of Independence, your own declaration of identity. So, yeah, it's an interesting time. I think many people are struggling in different ways. With this Mercury retrograde, we can address our inner self-talk. We can observe and monitor and be aware of what our inner dialogue is like. We can talk to our inner child. So that's all good things to use the Mercury retrograde for. So this week we're going to have, let's see. So we have the eclipse today. Within hours, Mercury is going to be joined by the moon. So these are times when we could just be in stillness and stop and reflect and receive. This is the discussion that I had yesterday. It's not, yes, Aries is a very active sign. There's Venus, the North Node, Sun, Chiron, Moon, Mercury, a lot of energies surrounding Aries, and Aries wants to get up and go and do. So I understood the energy behind what my friend was saying to me. And I said, part of Aries' lesson is yes, you do sometimes have to act, but sometimes you have to be patient, wait for instructions. That is what you should think about doing tomorrow. Now, the ruler of the eclipse, Mars, is again um, reiterating and emphasizing the point of slow down because it is conjunct to Saturn. Things are about to come to a halt or a pause. Let's just call it a pause because Mars is go and it's coming towards Saturn. It's just a degree away. And Saturn says, stop in the name of love. Which brings me to our next point, the asteroids. So Mercury retrograde, which is always a bit of a chaotic time because the influence of Mercury is strong. You would think that it would be the opposite, that Mercury would be weak. Well, it's weak in the sense that it's not operating the way it normally would because it's very slow, which means it's very close to the Earth. And so, therefore, it is not operating the way it normally would because it normally likes to zip along. That's a very mercurial Gemini type thing to want to do, but it's calling us to slow down and act and think and speak with caution. Um, Mercury retrograde is really good for going within, contemplating, looking at everything from through a microscope, really. It's really about the internal processing. So I do think with these asteroids that are conjunct to Mercury, which are Icarus, Eris, and Amor, Icarus and Eris being at 24 degrees and where Mercury is now, and Amor being at 25. And Mercury started out its retrograde at about, I think, 27. It already went over Amor. But what do we make of that? Icarus, Eris, and Amor. So if you know the story of Icarus, right, his wings got burnt off because he flew too close to the sun. So that is an indicator, again, to use caution. Don't overstep. And it is Mercury, so it's the mind. It's mental, it's verbal, it's communication, it's our travel activities. And here we are having a solar eclipse, and Icarus is flying too close to the sun, and NASA is shooting rockets at the eclipse or something like crazy like that. Like, what the heck? All right. Some of these things don't make sense. And it's my belief that it's put out there to have a certain effect on the collective psyche. But there's that. So Icarus is, going too far, just going too far with things, overstepping, overreaching. Eris is the goddess of chaos and discord. Hmm. Well, it's been in this degree roughly. It moves very, very slow, Eris does. So every time we have transits to Eris, we're having, things come up and we could see where the chaos and the discord is. It's like, is somebody going too far to try to stir up chaos and discord? So, you know, it seems like somebody comes along, says something, or just everything, the narrative. It's just too much, and it is stirring up some Eris in people. And then we have Amor. Amor. So asteroid Amor, I would say, Amor in terms of different types of love. Amor means love. And in mythology, um, like we do have an asteroid that is called Eros. That would be, erotic, intimate love. But this is Amor. And so it does speak of love in general, of all kinds. There's agape love, which is, it's brotherly love, it's love for humanity. And then you have familial love. I forget all of the Greek names for these things, but so it's the concept of love. And perhaps there is some reflection on our words, how we express ourselves, and a reminder to speak out of love, to express our love. Maybe. Then again, we do have Saturn and Mars conjunct. There is a hesitation. You know, with the Mercury retrograde, it's going to retrograde all the way back to the North Node and then go forward again. It's going to go, I think it'll probably catch up to Amor at some point. So there could be this contemplation of what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Um, and how do we express love? Like, are we being loving in our communications? And maybe we're having some inner reflection on whether or not we feel loved. It seems to me that this eclipse conjunct Chiron in Aries with Mars and Saturn, you know, Saturn, transits to Saturn can make you feel unloved, unwanted. Because Saturn is, you know, cold. It's lack. It's feeling a lack of love. And Mars being a fiery, passionate planet uh, and Aries being concerned, or focused on the self, right? Getting your validation, your concept of selfhood, and feeling like you matter comes from other people. Obviously, if you're always being ignored, you get the message that you're not worth the attention. Or if we're in terms of Mercury retrograde, we could be looking at, are we or is someone talking over us? Or are we not feeling heard? So if we want to really look at the Mercury retrograde and communication, do we feel heard? Do we feel seen? You know what? If somebody is doing 70% of the talking all the time, they damn well better be doing at least 30% of the listening. Because if they're not, I mean, how do you really know a person if you don't listen to them, if you can't hear what they're saying? Let someone tell you who they are rather than trying to sum it all up, with very little information and assume that you know a person. Give them a chance to talk. If you're dealing with somebody who doesn't talk a whole lot or offer up information about themselves, why don't you try like not talking and see what they say, or ask a question rather than I'm sure you all have this person in your life somewhere. You've encountered this person. When you have a conversation with them, it's them telling you shit. It's them telling you stuff. It's whatever is in their head coming out of their mouth. It's all about them. And if you can get a word in edgewise, they don't really respond to what you say. They hear it through the filter of how does this apply to me and how can I get the conversation back on track to me? They don't ever really hear you. If you hang around this person long enough, you will find they have a concept and an idea of you and who you are that has a lot of holes in it. Why? Because they haven't been listening. They don't listen. So you may encounter those people, or you might be that person. You might be coming to the realization that you're finding yourself alone, Aries, with no one to talk to, Mercury retrograde. You're in timeout because people have had it. People have had it and they don't have the bandwidth anymore for somebody who is not reciprocal, right? When it's all concentrated on Aries, it's all about them. There's no room for you in the relationship. And this doesn't just, I'm using conversation as an example. It just doesn't, it doesn't stop there. All right, enough about the eclipse and chatterly people. So there is a pause here with Mars, Saturn. We will either be physically stopped from moving forward, delayed, prevented, obstacles. Oh, another thing I want to talk about on the East Coast, if you've been following what's going on with bridges, how people look out for that possibility because this is the ninth house right here, according to where we are at in New York. And, you know, we could be separated by a body of water and there's no way to get across, but literally, but figuratively, the ninth house and Sagittarius are associated with high points and bridges, aviation, and Mars is a sign of war. So there is that. And then the ruler of Aries, which is here in Pisces, Mars in Pisces. Pisces is the water, rivers and oceans and sailing vessels. Mars is one of the planets in addition to Mercury. We're looking at transportation. We're looking at antiquated structures. The bridge system is, and the roads are quite antiquated. Anyway, so I don't know. That could be that we already saw that. We could see more of it. I don't know. But there will be stuff around water travel. I would also think that there would be an influence regarding fuel, liquids, explosives. You get the point. That's as far as I want to go with that. It's eighth house. Not crazy about that placement. Now, eclipses are a marker in time for, I know that they say that the influence of the eclipse depends on the length of time of the eclipse, the duration. The eclipse lasts will tell you how many months, a year, whatever. I just look at things in 6-month increments. And that degree will always be sensitive to a transit, regardless of how long the eclipse lasts. That's just the way I look at it. So it's the theme, at least for the next 6 months. And we will see, this is the beginning. Then when we have transits in Cancer through the sign of Cancer, that will be squaring the eclipse. when we have transits through Libra, that will be opposing the eclipse and activating previous eclipses in Libra. The south node is going to get to about 5 degrees where we had the lunar eclipse 2 weeks ago. So those are like the next chapters of whatever your story is right now around the time of the eclipse. So, um, around June, July, well, yeah, July, August, we'll have, triggers to the eclipse, and those will be, I would say, probably the square here from Cancer in July is going to be intense. It was transits coming through from Gemini into Cancer where we really saw the whole situation with the flood of visitors. Let's just call them visitors to our home, right? Okay. Throughout the week, let's watch and see when we have any aspects to Mercury and where the moon will be. All right. So tomorrow, between today and tomorrow, we're going to have a conjunction of the moon and Mercury. So we may not see any effects right off the rip today. Again, it all depends on your chart, what's going on with you. But it feels like this is the start of a building energy. So overnight, tonight into early morning, that's when we'll have the moon conjunct Mercury retrograde. That's a sensitive time. And then on the 9th, the moon goes into Taurus earlier in the morning, around, 8 o'clock on the East Coast. So that's 5 a.m. on the West Coast, which the moon is going to square to Pluto. I'm not crazy about that right there. So whatever happens overnight, it's triggered by Mercury retrograde. Could be transportation, could be vehicles, could be mobilization. Use your imagination. Moon square to Pluto is a frictious power dynamic, and the moon in Taurus, it's quite a stubborn energy. I don't know if we'll even know what's going on really, but here we have something like, I think what it's moves and counter moves, and Mars is about to hit a brick wall. It's a no. Saturn says no. Saturn could be a judge, the law, but not, it's more of authority, governmental type stuff. It does feel like there is a halt of movement or communication potentially. Pluto is in Aquarius. This could have to do with technology, electronics, maybe. Um, Moon in Taurus is pretty calm. Like, I know I've heard otherwise, but to me, when I sense the energy and I feel it, like, oh, okay, this is the moon in Taurus. What does it feel like? It feels slower, thicker, solid to me, more so than Aries. So it's almost like there's a lot of activity and then things calm down a little bit. Let's look at declination because it is a building energy. The moon is not yet out of bounds. Well, 13 north. It does conjunct, or not conjunct, but by declination, it's it will be, hang on. So it's coming off of a what they call parallel. Yeah. When the moon conjuncts to Mercury, it will also be parallel by declination. So that's interesting. It's just it's very strong. It's very, there's a lot of fire to it. And so I would expect that there's something going on that people are fired up about, talking about, probably whatever happens during the eclipse, which, nothing's going to be happening for me because you'll find me under my bed, hiding from the sun, the scorching rays of the eclipse. So a lot of activity and then a sort of like a standstill, a slowing down because Mars is coming up on Saturn. It's coming up on a halt, a slow down, a standstill, a blockage, whatever. And Moon square to Pluto. There's a lot of fear with Pluto aspects, a lot of desire for control, but also tapping into one's own personal power and charisma, standing your ground. All right. More or less, I'm just going to zip through the rest of the week because I don't want to make this a long one. Kind of wanted to get out to the store, but I guess that might have to wait. That's so Tuesday, the moon will be in Taurus for all of the day and until it connects with Jupiter and Uranus. This might be when we really see something happening on the 10th because moon Jupiter expands. The moon is the emotional climate, and Uranus is unexpected. And in terms of consciousness, we're working on a big enlightenment moment, right? Saturn is saying, stop, look around, see what's going down. And the message that is coming in, because on the 11th, we'll have a Mercury Sun conjunction, which Mercury retrograde does conjunct the Sun during its retrograde motion. And that's a moment of a message, an announcement, a realization. Uh, the Sun does represent the soul, right? The higher self, the soul, God, whatever, and core purpose. Mercury is the mental functioning. So in some way, that is fused. We are coming more into our purpose and alignment, let's say, between our higher self and lower self. You could look at it that way. But the moon here, there's a big shakeup coming. This could be financial, it could be material, it could be foreign trade, global finance, because Jupiter's in here. Again, we have Jupiter in Sagittarius. Themes, Taurus is earth and stability, and Uranus is shaking it up. So we could have another shaking, earthquake, bridge issue, and a stoppage of movement and travel. Now, this doesn't mean society is crumbling. This doesn't, we're, we really have to look at what's going on and the narrative that's being pushed about it, because there could be events occurring and we're being given wrong information. That can happen during Mercury retrograde, or there could be a spin on it and it causes a lot of fear. Saturn does cause fear, and Mars is action, like being afraid to act, potentially a lot of different things. But regardless, this is also very, very determined, because with Saturn, things are difficult. There are obstacles, there are delays, and there will be with Mercury retrograde. And Mars wants to move forward, but Saturn is holding it back. Delays, obstacles, fear, whatever it is. Anyway, the moon in Taurus is seeking stability, of course, but Jupiter with Uranus, nothing is stable right now, not even the Earth. I would look at this potentially during this time for there to be more earthquakes. Let's see where the declination of the moon is. Once the moon goes out of bounds, that's when the emotional climate is very high, especially north declination. Over here, declination 19, and the moon, it's moving towards the north declination where you'll see it higher in the sky. It's aspecting to Jupiter and Uranus, so there's big changes. It's intense. The moon will oppose by declination, which is called contraparallel. Parallel is like a conjunction. So the Pluto is 22 south, and the moon will be coming up on 22 north. So that will trigger Pluto. That would be pretty intense. So I think the more intense aspects are coming after the eclipse, the 9th into the 10th. It could be a series of things that come up, personal or collective, both. And again, depending on your chart. So if you're having transits, like if you had planets in Taurus around these degrees here, big changes. Or in Aries here. So the 11th, that's when we have Mercury and the Sun. Look for messages. Mars will be moving off of Saturn, so we'll feel some kind of a release here. But in terms of letting go to the south node, we have an inconjunct to the south node. Mars inconjunct the south node is there are things that we are needing to release in terms of creating more balance in our lives. And it could be something that is coming up with the Mars Saturn that makes us realize, okay, we need to find another strategy. We need to let go of something or someone. And there is probably a lot of anger and frustration here with Saturn. Mars in Pisces feels a little, victimy, neglected, or resentment. That's the word I was looking for. Mars in water signs can be a little bit passive aggressive and resentment. So it could be, that we need to release that kind of energy in terms of our relationships. And the moon in Gemini now on the 11th, it's going to trine to Pluto. So we will see more if there's anything having to do with crowds. This is also the power of the masses. And Aquarius being an air sign also, the moon being in an air sign, there's a lot of buzz around communication on this day. In our numerology, let's see, we're looking at this is as a 5-day. 5 days are a little chaotic. So pay attention because it feels like something is just getting started here. And then the moon on the 12th, while still in Gemini, the sun is moving away from Mercury. These two are separating. Also, these two are separating. So whatever delays or like stuff came to a standstill around the 9th, 10th, 11th, it's starting to move off by the 12th. And that frustrating aspect is dissipating. So that's a good thing. I just expect because of these aspects, the sun, Mercury, Mars and Saturn together, the moon hitting on the 10th. It's whatever's happening on the 10th that is going to cause delays. So there could be some miscommunication, lost paperwork, having to redo something, dealing with communication information around these days. So these are the days that I'm telling you probably really want to watch out for, but it seems to start to like come together and smooth out by the 12th, the 13th. The moon is sextile to the sun. That's a pretty good energy. So getting more information, getting a clearer picture. Well, it's really getting the clearer picture of what has been unclear, and there could still be some questions because the moon is square to Neptune, so be careful of that. I see a lot of scams come up, a lot of like, you know, bots on social media, people just trying to get over catfishing. All the weirdos come out during Mercury retrograde like that. And aspects to Neptune are it's easy to get deceived. So be aware of that. And making a hasty decision based on incomplete information. That's what you really need to watch out for. Jupiter is coming up on Uranus. I mean, that's a big deal. Like the eclipse, the retrograde of Mercury, the Saturn, Mars, and then after that, it's Jupiter conjunct Uranus. Jupiter expands, makes everything bigger. Uranus, so it's expanding. Uranus, just kidding. So, um, I mean, we got to look at all of the Jupiter type influences. We have to look at, well, the sign that it's in, Taurus, and Taurus's resources. Uranus is Uranus and Aquarius. That's technology. That's, you know, groups of people. That is the, all like the future, the developments, the technology, the advancements that we make in terms of technology, the internet, social media, science, rockets, God. Aliens, UFOs, paranormal stuff, crypto, and Jupiter. I would expect there to be, this could be huge lawsuits. This could be class action lawsuits involving large networks of people. Some of the aspects that we have going on here are aspecting two of my favorite asteroids in Virgo. So I'm going to say around the 12th, there could be something coming up regarding what happened at the last eclipse with the big, huge raid on, I don't think we're going to call him Diddy anymore. I think I'm going to call him Duty on duty. P Duty. In Virgo, somewhere around 15, we're going to have Mars and Saturn opposing or Orcus? Yeah, Orcus and Aphidas. If you've listened to my other podcasts, you know about Orcus and Aphidas. Those are the oath breakers and the guilty by association RICO asteroids for me. There's going to be there are bigger lawsuits coming with this Jupiter Uranus. If you watch, and follow celebrity gossip, that'll be interesting. I expect more arrests with that. It could be P. Duty himself, or it could be more charges on his kids. One of them already has a lawsuit alleging the same things, like father, like son. And in terms of, the everyday average person, I have felt like there could be some bigger lawsuits. I mean, it may mean nothing, but it means something in terms of the collective landscape and social media and technology and censorship and all of that shit. If there's class action lawsuits, yeah, you may not make a whole lot of money, but it can change laws. It sets precedent. So Jupiter, laws, legal issues, and Uranus, crazy things we've never seen. So, Mars Saturn here can be detention of someone, and Pisces is jail, with the moon triggering that. And Mercury will come up to the degree of the eclipse that will trigger it. There could be something going on during the eclipse that we don't hear about right away, but we hear about it in the following days around the 11th, the 12th. On the 13th, we have when the moon is at 28, 29 degrees of Gemini, and it will square Neptune. This is the moon will be transiting my whistleblower asteroid, Askalaphus. Askalaphus will bring out information, people talking about things that other people would rather them not talk about. So I expect more information that will expose whatever is here hidden with the Neptune. Okay. Every time we've had transits to the Neptune, it's been bringing up questions about why we're not being told the truth. Like we kind of know what's hidden around here. So, uh, Venus around this degree was talking about Kate Middleton, right? Um, we might have been dealing with some things coming up in our relationships that we didn't see before. And then the sun did the same, Mercury did the same. I've been watching it. So I wonder what's coming up. Probably there will be information coming because Mercury has a way of like being a trickster and letting out information, leaking things. I expect huge things being leaked. Photographs somewhere around 10 to 15 degrees of Cancer. I'm not going to pull it up right now, but Venus will be squaring Photographica. As the moon goes into Cancer, the moon will conjunct asteroid Chaos, Estrella, which is justice, Binor, which is the strong man who's been holding back some of this stuff. It's they can't hold it back anymore. So Photographica, the sun, this sun Mercury is going to be squaring child and Radiocommunicata that I've talked about in Capricorn around 18 to 20, maybe it's at 20, 22 degrees, both of them. They've been traveling together, maybe 2 degrees apart. So when the moon by the 14th, like next weekend, and the 15th by Monday, more stuff. Those asteroids were being transited. Let's see. I think that was the first pass of Mercury before it went retrograde. It in Aries, squaring to Radiocommunicata and child in Capricorn around 20 degrees or so. Now Mercury is back by the 15th on Chiron. They are squaring. The sun is actually by then. So there is something to do with children. There's something to do with radio communications. That covers anything, any kind of communications, telecommunications, interviews. When we were seeing, I think when Mercury came through the first pass That's when we saw Quiet on the Set come out and talking about there were people who did videos after that who were associated that worked on the show when they were kids but weren't big stars and talked about their experiences. A lot of crap is coming out. So by the 15th, we'd be knowing a lot of stuff here. Somebody is being arrested, detained, questioned regarding their communications, perhaps with children, or someone's children are being interviewed, their communications being looked at, perhaps. Um, and I guess on a personal level, if you wanted to apply that, maybe just take out Radiocommunicata and add the squares from Aries to Capricorn, and someone could be reviewing their, their childhood, their dynamic with their parents, because Capricorn and Cancer are the parental, that's the parental axis, the mother, the father, the home life, security, and could be, specifically about children. There's so many ways that we can interpret this. Use your imagination. However, there is a need to communicate, to express the pain, the suffering, the wounding, and the individual, how the individual, the core identity, how we feel about ourselves and yeah, how we assert ourselves and deal with our anger too. I mean, there's a lot of anger and frustration here too. Uh, a lot of things. And it can be um, affecting us in a lot of different areas in our personal relationships, in our work, in our home, our families, our goals, and it's, what we want to achieve and the difficulty or the stress that that's putting on us coming from all angles. We're going to be talking about the immigration issue. Can't help that. I'm pretty sure that asteroid house is in Pisces, maybe around Saturn, Mars. Let me just check on that because that can have to do with housing in general, the House of Representatives, whatever. An issue with regarding someone's house. Again, because we are dealing with Pisces energy, Pisces, and the moon squaring to to Neptune. Watch for gas explosions and gas leaks. Yes, 18 degrees. House might be around 20 by the time we get to the 15th. Let's see. Just be aware of that. And if that's degrees in your chart, especially in the fourth house, I don't know. I mean, that could be like you have to leave your house because there's the smell of gas and the gas company has to come in. Um, don't light a match. Just be aware of these things. There's a lot of fire energy happening and potential for explosive events. All right. So by the 15th, that gives us a week. That's the first quarter square with, what do you call it? The moon to the sun, called the crisis in conscience in astrology. Um, call this like the first real nudge of an inkling of whatever action you need to take or whatever's coming down the pike, whatever your eclipse story is. It's time to set intentions. You can act upon this, but there will be between the 14th and the 15th. That's when we could have some more snags in communication or where we realize there needs to be a healing moment in communication. We're not maybe getting our point across, we're not being heard or seen, we're not being valued for the individual that we are, or our needs are not getting met in some way. And um, yeah, it may be difficult to express our feelings at this time. And, the frustration and anger can come out passive aggressively and, blaming the other person. It's really best to like just self-reflect and say, what's going on with me? This is a me problem. Okay. This is a time this week not to point the finger. Yeah, somebody might be pissing you off, but look at the issue and say, okay, this is a me problem. What am I feeling? Like, what is this situation or this conflict? This is about conflict and conflict resolution and communicating. We're talking about personal relationships, yes, but we will see a lot of conflict out in the world. It's just that kind of energy that we're going to see, like saber rattling and, you know, probably with the moon square to Pluto, some kind of like talk about nuclear threats. I don't really see it going nuclear, but like I said, saber rattling. Venus is coming up to the North Node. So this is a good time to be, to let peace start with you. Let the healing start with you. Um, and Mercury in retrograde with Chiron is telling us, while the moon squares it from the 14th to the 15th, we need to express our emotions. We need to be able to express how we feel. And if there's a disconnect in the relationship, we have to look at that. Why do we not feel safe, moon in Cancer, to express how we feel, to express who we are, to talk about our needs, to talk about where our needs are not getting met? Is it because the other person lacks the depth and the empathy, or are they not wanting to take accountability, not wanting to look at themselves? we have to be the ones to look at ourselves first, right? If we're looking at ourselves, taking, being accountable, like are we not communicating in a loving way? Are we reacting or speaking out of anger and pain? We have to deal with those things, because can't expect the other side to change while we're being hostile. It's very complicated energy, but it does go way back to the family dynamic and, you know, how we expressed our needs, our wants, desires, our anger, our pain. Were we even allowed to do that? You know, what was the dynamic with the parents? Were they fighting? Are we repeating that pattern where we are not, where we're blocked, we're not able to express because we were not allowed to express, or we weren't being heard? So there's a deep core wounding with the selfhood that we are having to address, or we're seeing play out, right? On a, you know, psychological level, in the dynamics in our relationships, in the patterns, and going back, rooting to the past, and probably dealing with some probably inability to access a certain level of emotion, of not even being able, for some people, to be able to connect with empathy because we just don't feel anything. We've been blocked from feeling, and I'm referring to Saturn here in Pisces, is feeling disconnected on a very deep level. Like that's a core spiritual wound there. And with Saturn, it does relate to the father and authority figures, right? And that's the way it comes in, but it's a blockage for us because it's disconnecting us from the Pisces, from accessing the Pisces energy. So it accesses the Pisces energy in a very dysfunctional way, which can lead to addictions. So there are, if you look at where Saturn is in your chart, if you were born in the mid 60s, you're having a Saturn return. So, this could be dealing with families and addiction. And, I know plenty of people who are functional and drink every day, but don't consider themselves to be an alcoholic. And I know people who are dealing with people like that in their, relationships, and realizing certain patterns that are patterns related to, you know, um, to addiction, because it affects the dynamic, the relationship, it affects a lot of things. So anyway, that's just a side note. But Saturn in Pisces Saturn is restriction. Saturn is being like cut off. It's a lack of, or feeling a lack of. And Pisces is the connection to God, to spirit, which is, where the addictive tendency comes, is to want to use like drugs and alcohol as an escape. So, I mean, there could be other planets that you're having transits to here that are causing a need to sober up, right? Saturn is sober, very complicated. energies. So by the 15th, we have the first quarter square. By the 15th, we know what the issue is. And I say issue in quotes. It's our issue. We have to take it first on ourselves to say, what is the issue that I'm experiencing? Who am I as an individual? How do I feel that I am being blocked or invalidated or cut off from being able to truly connect with people, with others, with spirit, with God. This Mars Saturn in Pisces feels like spiritual abandonment issues, because our parents and our early experiences with adults form a blueprint of how we see spiritual authority or God, right? And feeling cut off, feeling unworthy of love, right? And that leads to a spiritual sickness and addiction issues. So these are very general things that I'm throwing out there. But Venus coming in, conjuncting the North Node, then later next week it'll connect with Chiron. That is an attempt at healing or an understanding of what needs to be healed in the individual, in relationships, also focusing on the masculine energy. Masculine, I'm not just talking about men. Masculine energy is brave, courageous, protective. Uh, Mars is the masculine planet, a masculine principle relates to Aries. So, do we take initiative? How do we handle our martial energy? Mars and masculine is protective, right? So, a lot of stuff going on. Anything else I wanted to say? Let me see if there's any other asteroids that I think are worth mentioning. Neptune and Deikanira are almost conjunct in Pisces, 26 and 28 degrees, respectively. I'll share my asteroid screen with you. Let's see. And we'll zip quickly through the asteroids. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Nessus, house. Nessus, again, we talked about that in previous shows. That's one of our abuser asteroids. House, Saturn, Mars at 13 and 14 degrees. House and Nessus are sextiling to Jupiter. So those can be triggered. Abuse taking place at a house, and a lawsuit. Jupiter, laws being enforced, and friends, networks, communications with Uranus, Jupiter, Uranus. That conjunction is forming. What else? Okay, so 23 degrees Capricorn, child in Radiocommunicata. They're traveling pretty slow, so I think they'll be at about 24, max 25 by the end of the week. And that's what I was talking about with Mercury retrograde having already squared it. I would say around the 10th, something having to just look for communications having to do with a child, from a child to a child, an interview, maybe, possibly. A Rokoff, I've talked about that with Antarctica and the Nazis and Ultima Thule. Do your own research on that. That asteroid I'm just mentioning because it will be triggered by the Mercury retrograde and by the sun as it squares by the 12th, 13th. That's when the sun will be squaring Radiocommunicata and Arrokoth and Child. Okay, moving right along. Now, Ixion and Isis. Ixion is my wheel of karma. Has to do themes. Ixion themes are the wheel of karma and punishment and not respecting other people's partners. So cheating, love triangles, murder, that kind of thing. Venus is squaring on the 9th and the 10th. Venus, money or females or love partnerships. Isis is perhaps bringing something up. Also, Ixion is retrograde. This could be bringing something up regarding past cheating, past relationships, past misdeeds and uh, misadventures. Anyway, moving on. Not much going on in Sagittarius. Prey is at Prey is at 25. That will be triggered by the Mercury retrograde and the Sun transit in Aries. So also Persephone will be. What a time to do the dishes. All right, Scorpio. Again, what's going on? 13 to 14 degrees, Narcissus, hubris, or hybris. The asteroid is called Hybris. Narcissus and Hybris, retrograde, bringing up past issues of narcissism and hubris. And the moon will be opposite that on the 10th. Mercury and Mars in Pisces are making a trine. So there is karma, there is repercussion, there is a blockage here in regard to these issues. If you have planets here, this is duties. Sun is at like 12 degrees of Scorpio, and his narcissism and his hubris are leaking out all over the place. Libra, Zeus is at 24 of Libra. We're going to have Mercury retrograde opposing it. Zeus is obviously solar deity, masculine energy, leaders, and Zeus. Well, if you look at the dynamic between Zeus and is it Hera or Juno? I think it's Jupiter and Juno and Zeus and Hera. The masculine, feminine, the wife, the husband, you know, he's the cheater all the time, getting other women pregnant. He just thinks he can do what he wants. That's all. Okay, what else do we have going on? DNA, one of my favorites, is at 28 degrees of Virgo. Not really having any transits. Aphidas and Orcus is opposite to Mars and Saturn. So on April 10th is when that aspect between Mars and Saturn, Mars wants to go, Saturn says no, because Saturn, the judge, is looking at Aphidas, the guilty by association RICO asteroid, and criminal syndicates. And Orcus is oath breakers, oath takers, oath breakers. Orcus is an asteroid it's one of the judges, the quote underworld judges. Underworld meaning judges of the dead, like judges of not men, but of souls. And Orcus deals with oath breakers. So this is in Virgo, I mean, this is public servants, whether it's politicians, people in like first responders, police, public servants, people who are there to serve, serve the population, serve and protect. And Orcus is dealing with oath breakers. This is also because it's connected to Aphidas, it's criminal networks and not snitches because that's the Askalaphus, but the oaths that people take within those networks that, not to talk or, not to make waves. This is what we're all going to do. They all really seem to be on the same page. And Saturn and Mars is saying, this is our narrative. This is what we're going to say. Don't break rank. And when the moon goes through Gemini, when the moon gets to about 14 degrees of Gemini on the 12th, between the 12th and the 13th, somebody's breaking rank. The reason why I say that is because on the 13th, the moon will be conjunct Askalaphus, and that's somebody, blowing the whistle, breaking rank. They're breaking rank on the 12th to the 13th. Mars is moving away from Saturn. So Mars is no longer, the restriction is being lifted off that energy. But this is also law enforcement, this could be Mars, law enforcement, going to the judge, Saturn, looking at the Aphidas, guilty by association, RICO, criminal network, Orcus, oath breakers. There's so much being looked at here. And I'm zoning in on this because we have an active situation. And we have many people involved. So I think that around the 11th, 12th, while we do have the Sun conjunct Mercury retrograde, I feel like because the Sun in a chart also represents the leader, either the leader gets arrested, detained, taken care of, questioned. Somebody high up is breaking the ranks, breaking the silence, breaking, not falling in line with the narrative and is talking. We may or we may not hear about it. But what I'm telling you also is that, yes, we can look at the P. Duty situation as being an indicator of what is also going on that we don't see behind the scenes, but we could also hear about it in politics too. So what else is going on with this? Well, Venus is going to, like I said, when it left the shadow of Neptune and stepped into Aries, it squared chaos. And we did see that. We saw it with the Kate Middleton stuff. Arachne, that's a big spider web right there. Webs and strategies, like think about the web that's being woven, the trap that's being set, the Askalaphus whistleblower, the Asbolus, the seer. The seer saw this coming. This is how we're going to set it up. The people are coming forward that we need to talk. There are double agents here. So Venus squares Binor and Hades. Hades and Estrella. Hades is like hell. Like somebody is really in their family life going through hell. Squared by Venus, the relationships, most notably with males. Estrella is justice. So on the 14th and the 15th, Venus will be squaring Estrella, justice, and Photographica, and Apollo, which is Zeus, which is Jupiter, and Kronos, which is Saturn. Apollo and Kronos, this is like father and son, and the karma of the father passed on to the son. We are supposed to break free of the karma and the patterning of our parents. As we see ourselves repeating the pattern, something's going on next weekend within family dynamics, within fathers and sons. Very interesting to see what comes out with a legal situation, because we have Estrella, which is the scales of justice. So Estrella presents in the scales the deeds of men to Jupiter, to Zeus, right? And Jupiter is Sagittarius. It is um, the justice system, the legal system. And then Saturn is the judge. And Kronos is another name for Saturn. Bam. So much going on. Chiron, Mercury, the solar eclipse squared the Sphinx. Sphinx is a mystery, an enigma, and all of the things associated with Egyptian mythology. Echeclus is 3 times the charm. It relates to Mercury in like retrograde things. It's the first pass, the second reverse pass, and then the third pass going forward when we're talking about 3 times past, present, future with Echeclus. It's going back based on the information we have now, going back and now filling in the blanks with past situations. This is the eclipse squaring Echeclus here. 20 degrees of Cancer. That opposes Radiocommunicata and Child. So there is something about looking at past, being able to confront and looking at past occurrences, the pattern, and the family stuff, the mother, the father. What are the issues, the Chiron wound that we're healing? How do we feel about ourselves as an individual based on, you know, certain things that have happened in the past, and we're really like rehashing things with this eclipse on a personal level, but we're also we are getting to see some toxic family dynamics play out in the very public arena, whether it's entertainment, um, the royals. It's 144 right now. I gotta get off. Politics, the dynamics of, our own families and the people around us, all of it is all very interesting. Achilles at 25 will be squared by the sun, by Mercury retrograde. It's our Achilles heel, our Achilles tendon. It's a very tender, vulnerable, a wound that it's sort of like another Chiron thing where, that's my weak spot. That's my, the scab. That wound is always there. It's not as triggered the more we work on it and we heal ourselves, then we're not necessarily reacting to it, but getting a chance to look at those things. We've got Nemesis in here too. A whole lot of crazy going on. And Jupiter and Uranus are with Panacea, the cure, Clotho, fate. Clotho is one of those asteroids that it's one of the 3 fates. I look at it like the cloth being, we're weaving our story. And Clotho is one of the fates that one spins, one weaves, and the other cuts, right? So it's sort of like a past, present, and future idea also, in the same way that Echeclus is, right? So the story has a beginning, a middle, and end. And this is fate and karma. And Clotho is also related to DNA. If you look it up, Clotho is an enzyme having to do with DNA. So that's very interesting. So Uranus and Jupiter are here. Jupiter's here with Dionysus, Pandora, Lachesis. Lachesis is one of the 3 fates. It's Lachesis, Clotho, and Atropos. Atropos is the one who cuts. Bless you. And those are all very interesting. So look them up if you have planets at those degrees. Wow, Eros is on. Eros, yeah. Eros is 2 degrees from Algol. Wow, that's interesting. Alicanto, that's the Chilean bird, mythical Chilean, sort of like a phoenix, but it also has to do with precious metals. Oh, yeah, something I was also thinking about with the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, precious metals. Look at precious metals and Alicanto in there. As Jupiter and this is a long-term transit, really, with Jupiter moving into conjunction with Uranus, that could signal the beginning of the rise of in price of precious metals. Maybe not investing advice, but Jupiter will conjunct Alicanto. And Alicanto, from a spiritual perspective, is not seeking after riches or fame or success for just personal benefit, for greed. It's blessings and riches and abundance when you least expect it, because you live your life not in pursuit of it, but in pursuit of spiritual things. But Tantalus is here too. There is a temptation to want to chase after money and fame. I think that's part of what we see going down legally also. What we see being played out, the narrative, the downfall, Mercury retrograde, I mentioned Amor. The moon goes into Taurus right after the eclipse, early, I think, on the 9th, and conjuncts to Phaethon and Karma, which is very interesting because Mr. Duty, his Saturn is here. He's got Saturn opposite Mercury. Mercury's in um, Scorpio. He did have an eclipse, I think, let's see, it would have been like 2 years ago, I think. Maybe a solar eclipse on his Mercury in Scorpio. Don't quote me. Anyway, the moon will hit Phaethon and Karma. Phaethon is another one of those Icarus type, you know, living fast. It's also associated with car accidents and crash and burn in a figurative sense, and karma. So with him, with his Saturn being there, this is him living out the karma of his father. Um, Rumor has it, and I'm pretty sure it's true, but I have to say, like, I don't know for sure, but rumor has it that his father um was a criminal, and he became an informant, a confidential informant, and it's been exposed now, and there are court documents, so there's proof out there that Diddy is a CI for the feds, which is why he hasn't gotten busted. But I have a feeling that what's going on too, because there's Icarus and Phaethon in the mix, this is him. He's pissing people off higher up than him because he just thinks that, there's no limits, there's no boundaries, he could do what he wants. Um, he's overstepped his bounds. That's an Ixion thing, which is trine to Karma and Phaethon. It's a Phaethon thing. Phaethon gets struck down by a lightning bolt from Zeus because he drove the chariot too close to Earth. Icarus flew too close to the sun. So these are things where situations where people are not respecting authority, boundaries, spiritual law, um, and Mars, Saturn is stopping that. It's putting a halt to it. Now, my guess is he threatened people more powerful than him. He thinks that he's got the goods on everyone because they let him operate. They, they let him operate. Uh, Somehow he broke his oath to the organization, Orcus and Aphidas, and he's being looked at with scrutiny and stopped by the judge, by law enforcement. And it's karma, it's cause and effect. It's um, don't it takes me back to Ixion. The lunar eclipse squared Ixion, and Ixion is is don't bite the hand that feeds you. Don't piss off your benefactor. So while not everyone gives a shit about Mr. Duty, this is the this is the tone of the time. There are times for judgment and karma, retribution of comeuppance of certain activities and people being stopped because it's gone too far. I believe, probably he became a liability. But with Faith on here, I wonder, could there be an unfortunate accident? Just a thought. Look at what happened to his father. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Doesn't even mean that it could happen now. It could happen in the future. Don't know. But I'm wondering, just wondering, just wondering out loud. Okay, you guys, it's time for me to crawl under my bed. I can feel the eclipse creeping in. Oof. Ugh, didn't feel great. Um, I'm gonna go take a nap. I'll probably upload this after my nap, after my eclipse nap. Okay. You know where to find me, guys. If you're looking for a reading, hit me up. 914-222-1231 or at astrolunatic@gmail.com. Please check in the description of this video on YouTube for my links of where to find me. And as always, ciao for now.